How's it going, everybody? Maxwell McGee here, and today we are checking out Daylight, a new survival horror game. And to help me do that, I'm joined by John Harden from Atlas and Andre McGuire, creative director at Zombie Studios. Gentlemen, thank you both for sitting down with us. First off, which one of you is John and which one of you is Andre?
I am John.
There we go.
This is John. I'm Andre. We got that straight.
And this is Daylight. So please
Daylight.
Introduce this game for us. What are we looking at?
Daylight's going to be a psychological horror game coming out for the PC and PS4 in early 2014. The psychological horror genre, or the horror genre in general, is kind of underrepresented here, but one thing that we do that no one else really does right now is make it procedurally generated, meaning you are never going to play the same thing twice. The corridors you see us walking through right now, all of these are put together at random, so every time you start up a new game, the layout's going to be different, everything in the corridors is going to be different, the things that jump out and scare you are going to be different. So yeah, you're never going to get scared in the same way twice.
Yeah, that's something I think is really interesting because obviously building horror and building a horror game is so much about crafting a very specific experience and having your scares queued up ahead of time and building mood and building suspense. Like, how do you leave that to chance?
So much about horror is about setting up a standard and breaking it, but what we're able to do with the procedural content is we're able to make it new every time. So with a lot of horror games, you get that problem of the walkthrough gets posted up on YouTube, all your scares get spoiled. We've set up a system where we can actually keep it fresh and terrifying each time. So that really works in our advantage, and really that's one of the reasons why we think that a procedurally generated game is such a great fit for the horror genre. But it is true, and so we're setting up some systems that allow that kind of anticipation build up as you're going through the corridors. You know, you're hearing changes in the ambience, or you're hearing changes in the music. You're picking up items that are, deal with subject matter that's very spooky, and then, we're able to kind of get the player to that frame of mind, even if in this procedurally generated environment where it's, have these big scares and that kind of a thing, and it's really interesting to develop.
So then, Andre, does this game sort of follow a roguelike kind of style where you're expected to play through it multiple times? It's a little bit different each time.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't carry any sort of character progression between playthroughs?
Well,
or things
we're
like
really
that?
trying to avoid the kind of the tropes where you're fighting monsters and exchanging blows and blowing things up. It's really not a combat experience. It's really about sort of uncovering the story of our main character Sarah, and also uncovering the story of the island where this takes place. So yeah, I mean, we're expecting players to go through it multiple times. You'll get a different result each time as far as the things that you find along the way, and that's going to mean the story is going to sort of unravel in a unique way each time.
Yeah, it's not really a horror game when players spend all their time looking for extra ammo or that weapon to keep them alive. So we've created this incredible sense of isolation in Daylight, where you at the same time you are the lone person in this hospital. There's also that incredible nagging feeling that something's in here with you. What that something is, we leave to the player's imagination. Don't come right out and throw it in people's faces.
Yeah, something you mentioned earlier that I thought was a little funny is that even though we're investigating a spooky abandoned hospital right now, the game is not entirely spooky.
That's right.
Abandoned hospitals.
Yeah. You kind of wake up in this abandoned hospital initially, but as things progress, the environments also there's a lot of surprises for the environments. So the environments progress in interesting ways too, because the game is procedurally generated. It allows us to play with a lot of different feels and looks and things.
How long do you think a typical playthrough would last for somebody? Are you expecting multiple short bursts?
So yeah. A typical playthrough is going to be a couple hours. I mean, if you're great at exploring, if you sprint through, you find all the keys and everything to get into the next areas, then you're only looking at a couple hours. But that one playthrough is not going to give you a good snapshot of what's going on in the story. I mean, you'll hit the certain key moments, but you're not going to figure out what's going on with this island. There's a lot of depth there in terms of without spoiling it, the island's history.
Okay. So then, just to cover our bases here, talk a little bit about the what I think is a compass, I'm assuming, down in the corner that she's holding.
Yeah. The player has a cell phone that's got a light on it. The compass is something that we're working on as far as how the player is going to navigate this procedural space. So one of the challenges is that it is procedural, and that's very cool for the horror genre, and it's certainly exciting for us to work on. But it's also creates some challenges for us as far as giving the player direction and figuring out how to get through the different objectives. So yeah, we're playing with the idea of a compass here. We've got some additional ideas for the cell phone that we're not quite showing yet, but this will help the player navigate these randomized spaces.
Yeah, I imagine it must be with any, well, I guess this is true for any roguelike, but having that sort of modular design where any piece could fit together in any sort of way, and you don't know exactly how it's going to go. Giving the player a compass is probably a really good tool to have.
Yeah, and it also you can see some of the corruptions and things that are happening on the screen there. That's going to tie into the things that you find in these environments that you know, we're hoping are going to be really cool to learn about, and also very scary.
So in addition to like the exploration elements, like what's the main form of challenge for the player, if not combat?
Really, it's all about trying to get out of the location, figure out how to solve the maze, if we're to sort of characterize the environments as a maze.
Okay.
And also uncover the story, which is going to be randomly populated throughout the environments in the form of pickups and notes and things that you'll find along the way. So as you're uncovering that story, you're also sort of making your way through it.
I think that's really interesting that you, the player, can figure out, because I imagine the character in the game is not going to be able to piece together the story because you're going through multiple playthroughs, but you, the player, will be able to piece together the story because you can live out multiple instances of her life.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
I'd also be remiss to point out that this is going to be one of the first Unreal Engine 4 games for the PC and PS4. It's just something that handles the whole procedural nature of Daylight so well, and came together and made a really cool environment for the game.
Yeah, was doing this game in sort of a procedural, randomized style, was that an idea you guys had from the beginning?
Yeah, as far as doing a procedural game, that's something that was part of the concept from the beginning. But what was cool about working with Unreal 4 is that we were able to jump right into that kind of tech and have our focus be on that, because the engine is so streamlined. We're not focusing a lot of attention, or having to focus a lot of attention on setting up a lighting engine or figuring out how we're going to get this thing to render. It was really about content from the beginning.
All right, guys. Well, thank you both for sitting down and talking with us and showing off Daylight. Can you remind the listeners at home when this game is coming out?
Absolutely. Look for it as a downloadable title in early 2014 for the PC and PS4.